Hey, Vinyl Community, Jeff here again for a little thread entry here. And this is an interesting one. This is a time-sensitive one. This is one that's probably not going to appeal to everyone because it is one that has been brought out by Ron over GTR Rock Realm, and he is looking to celebrate the Resurrection Sunday that's coming up next Sunday, not this Sunday, which is Palm Sunday. And so he wanted us to just give records where the letters spell out the word Jesus. Like Ron, I am a believer, and so I know that not everybody would be into this. And like Ron, I'm going to give mine in such a way that tells a little bit of a story. Bear with me if you're not into this at all, but there is going to be some brief discussion of biblical topics. I'm going to try to keep it quick. So yeah, this weekend, this particular Sunday is Palm Sunday, which is the celebration of when Jesus came in riding into the city, and then the whole week long that led up to the crucifixion and everything on that following weekend, which is what we celebrate on Resurrection Sunday. So I've themed it to be about that. Again, you don't have to be a person of faith. You could look at it strictly and just jump on board and have fun with it to spell the letters. I've seen other people do it. So not a big deal. So we're going to start with J for Jerusalem. Significance of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the city in which Christ was crucified. It is the city of which is the pivotal discussion of most of the condemnations and prophecies mentioned in the New Testament. Christ himself said, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those sent to it. See, your house is left unto you desolate." We find that it was the city where the temple was, and it was a city that had a long history of covenant breaking, and it was coming to a head now. And as prophesied in Deuteronomy 32, throughout Isaiah, most of the Gospels, all the parables pretty much, and into the book of Revelation, all discussed the ultimate destruction of this city, which did happen in AD 70. So Jerusalem is for J. E is Exodus. Exodus is, of course, the book in the Bible. Most of you know the story of the book of Exodus, the story of Moses and the people in Egypt and going through the wilderness for 40 years and coming to the promised land, etc. Well, if you are steeped in biblical theology, it is understood that the New Testament is the second Exodus. It is the people leaving and coming to a new city. So as in the old Exodus, the people wandered for 40 years under the leadership of Moses, and then they eventually arrived at the promised land to find a fortified city of Jericho blocking the way, and they ultimately destroyed the city to enter the promised land. And in the Bible, you have the 40-year wandering of the apostles as they're going through preaching the gospel, and from the time of Christ in 30 to the time of AD 70, when the fortified city of Jerusalem was likewise destroyed by God, as prophesied in Matthew, all the Gospels, and in the book of Revelation, was fortified city of Jerusalem. And Daniel 12 spoke of the ultimate destruction. And so all of that came to a head in the first century. After the end of the second Exodus, Jerusalem, of course, being referred to as the Egypt and Sodom, and so it is tied into the Egypt Exodus of the first 40 years. And so the great city of Jerusalem at the end of the Exodus was destroyed, and at the end of those 40 years in AD 70, when the city was destroyed, the people of God entered into the new heavens and new earth, which was the new covenant promise of the promised land. Coming up next is S for Scattered Few, and the reason I picked this particular album is because there's a song in here called Sheol and Sleeper, and so I wanted to refer to that because Sheol was known as, also in the New Testament, as Hades, often misinterpreted as hell, not the lake of fire. Hades, Sheol, is the place for the dead. It's the one storage place where all spirits went, good and bad, until the resurrection when Christ would bring them out. That is the place that had victory and sting. That's the victory and sting of death, Sheol. And so when Christ came and died on the cross, and it says in the creed that he descended into hell, it's the real translation is he descended into Hades. It's also the place mentioned by Jesus in his parable or story in Luke of Lazarus and the rich man who went to the places separated by the gulf and everything. The Sheol is totally described in the book of Enoch, which is a extra biblical writing that was referenced throughout the New Testament many times, so it was a common theme. Anyway, Sheol is the place of focus when Christ descended, spoke to the spirits in prison, ultimately pulled them out of there at the resurrection, and that is the terminal situation was coming. So there's the work of Christ in Sheol. Like Ron and others, I'm going to go with you for ultimatum. Ultimatum into the pit. The pit often, as a quote from Revelation for this particular story, but the pit often is known as hell, which would be different from Hades and the lake of fire. So I thought that'd be a nice little tie-in. So ultimatum, you. And then we end with sacrament. Sacrament, which was, of course, the Lord's Supper is a sacrament that we take in the church to remember the workings of Christ on the cross. Sacrament of the Lord's Supper established before the crucifixion to do in remembrance of what his works were on the cross. So there you go. Easy peasy, brief little story there, spelling the word Jesus. Jump on board if you're interested. Try it, as Ron said, don't do it with a blasphemous way. You know, it's just fun. It's just having some fun there, because a lot of people celebrate this holiday for various reasons, whether religious or not. But in our case, we do have a religious bent towards that. I actually am preaching this Sunday at church. Our pastor's out of town, so I have to preach on Palm Sunday. I will be dealing with the crucifixion and the cross, and then the following week being Resurrection Sunday that leads into that. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks a lot for watching. Rock on and rock hard.